Hello and welcome to a new edition of the CBB Super Show. I'm your host, Walter Waddell, aka Dub85, the niche sports connoisseur. It's March Madness. You know why I'm here. It's not so I don't get fined. It's so I help everybody make money, including myself, whether that's DFS, bets, or props. We are out here. Appreciate it. We're into the round of 32. The first round is officially over. We have cut the field in half. 32 teams are left. Not a ton of drama, but some good games. We'll talk a little bit about the first half here. And then we're going to dive right in after that to the 8-game slate. Man, the last 2 days have been great. I personally love the chaos of the 16-game slate. It is tough, right? There's ceiling games galore. I think the sweet spot's probably 8 to 10 games. That's probably the best. But we will have 8-gamer tomorrow and Sunday, and then we'll be cutting into the 4-game slates next week, and then it'll be 2-game slates, and then the season will be over. Oh, it's gone by so fast. Minor complaint. NIT games. Second round NIT games tomorrow and Sunday as well. Why the hell couldn't they just wait till Monday? Come on, man. We need to spread these things out. We got the Crown on April 1st. Still games to be had. Won our best bet today. A sweaty over. The over 145.5 in the Missouri-Miami game. We get there at the end with some made free throws. We'll take it. All right. Let me make sure everything's working here. While I'm doing my little retweets and stuff, those of you who are dropping in, please make sure you are throwing me some social currency. I won't ask you for real money. If you ever want to give some, we won't say no. But likes, interactions, reposts, and retweets, all of that stuff is extraordinarily helpful for the Super Show and the brand itself on FTN, Stat Rankings, the green screens, and Window Trips community. Lots going on. So let me just do this real quick. Retweet. I know it's Friday night, so a little bit later. I wanted to finish up the game. Shout out to Terrace Reed. What a monstrous game he just had. All right, do that. Boom, boom, boom. Let's go do here. Let's share our screen. All right, let's pull up the bracket. Let's go ahead while we're doing that. Pull up the bracket. Not the NIT bracket. All right, there we go. All right, so we are into the second round. We have 8 games Saturday. We have 8 games Sunday. Now, I have multiple kids, as you guys know, and birthdays for 2 of them are March 19th, just had it, and March 21st, tomorrow. So there's going to be a ton of kids here. My younger daughter's birthday tomorrow. We're having a birthday party. There's going to be kids sleeping over. It's going to be chaos. So I've moved all of my stuff out to my office, converted the garage into the office. And, that's where I do my shows anyway. But, yeah, so we'll still be around. It'll be a late night show tomorrow, possibly early morning there with the sleepover. But, yeah, still doing dad duty. It does not end. All right, so let's take a look at this beautiful second-round bracket that we have here, starting up in the East. Duke as the 1 seed advancing against Siena. Siena gave them a hell of a game, did they not? Man, shout out to Jerry McNamara. He's definitely going to get another job at a higher major. I think he needs like 1 more before he goes to Syracuse, but, I digress. Siena, throughout that game, I'd say probably 80% of it had Duke on the ropes. Duke, just the Boozer brothers. Caden's had a bit of a rough season compared to Cameron, but the last 3 or 4 games, Caden has really come into his own and was a primary reason why they were able to knock off Siena. Shout out to the freshman, Francis Folafag. He will definitely be getting into the transfer portal, getting offered a decent NIL. One thing for Jerry, I would have probably subbed Christian Jones in for more than 30 seconds. He played his entire starting lineup for the entire 40 minutes. which is what they did in the conference tournament finals as well. Played Christian Jones just 6 minutes. Maybe a couple of minutes here. You could tell how flat they were at the end. Had that been like my boys from Perryview A&M who got curb stomped today, or Queens who also didn't do very well, but had they been in that position with Siena and their depth, I think they could have realistically pushed Duke and possibly even won. I really do. But shout out to Duke. They advance. They'll be taking on TCU. This is a matchup that, during the bracket shows, talking about this with Adam and even Mike the other night to a degree. The winner of that TCU Ohio State game, I thought if it was TCU that they would match up pretty well with Duke, and here we have that matchup. So we're going to talk about that at length today. But Duke versus TCU should be a very good 1-9 matchup. This is the one I'm calling for the Cameron Boozer legacy game. Seems like Duke always has these really tough second-round games, and I think TCU, this is going to be like that UCF Duke second-round game from a few years ago with Taco Fall and Zion Williamson, RJ Barrett. That was a war. Ultimately, Duke won, but I think that's what we're going to see. St. John's takes care of business. I said it, like I love Northern Iowa coming into it, but they were in a very bad spot as a 12 seed. Most of the 12 seeds were. It's funny because the 112 seed I really liked didn't make it, and the 12 seed that I thought was the least likely outside of Northern Iowa to make it did make it. But St. John's absolutely just totally dominated over Northern Iowa. This is a bad spot, really bad matchup for them. I think Northern Iowa could have beaten Wisconsin for sure, but not St. John's. Kansas, there was a lot of trash talking about my boys from the Lancers. I was getting some DMs, Cal Baptist plus 13.5. You were all over that all week. What's up? It's cool. I don't mind the trolling. And it looked bad. I mean, it was, 33-18 at halftime. But you know what? My man, Dom Daniels, Mighty Mouse himself, what a hell of a game in the second half he had. Damn near carried them back all the way, but most importantly, carried them for the cover, losing by just 8. Shout out to the Lancers. They'll be back in the tournament. Dom Daniels for staying his entire career at one school. What a stud. But we will be getting that St. John's 4-5 matchup against Kansas. And I got to say, Kansas susceptible. Flory Badunga kind of hurt himself a little bit in the second half, but man, that was the most passive game I have ever seen him play. I shouldn't say ever, but this year for sure. Needed 9 rebounds from Flory for a huge payday on Underdog. Fortunately, he only got 7. A little disappointing there. I'm a little bit worried for him, honestly, against the St. John's front court, but we'll talk about that more later. 6 seed Louisville taking on the 3 seed Michigan State. I was pretty heavy on South Florida. Great cover for them late. Shout out to Louisville. Without Michael Brown, they do advance. They'll be facing Sparty, who took care of business against NDSU. By the way, I'm going through the bracket here because I was unable to go live last night like I originally planned. Just really tired at the end of the day, and pulling all-nighter is just not in the cards for me anymore. UCLA takes care of business. No Tyler Bilodeau, but didn't need him. Eric Daly played extremely well. Donovan Dent with another monster game. 6 steals. Donovan, come on. UConn with a big win over Furman. Shout out to Furman. They really pushed UConn there. I thought they would have a chance, especially when Silas Demery was ruled out. Furman has an absolute stud of a freshman, and a lot of you guys got to see him probably for the first time today. I'm talking about Alex Wilkins, who in 35 minutes put up a solid 21 points and 4 assists there. He'll be portaling. I'm almost certain of it, and he'll have some high major offers. I do want to caution him not to go straight up to like the SEC because I do worry he'd get buried on the bench there. But if he moved his way up to let's say a Pac-12 team, which is coming back, or a Mountain West team, WCC even, he could still have a very fruitful career. But yeah, should definitely be careful. Shout out to Terrace Reed. There was a lot, 16 games. There's a ton of variance. There's a lot of high scores. There's guys breaking the slate left and right. I mean, we had Aiden Jarrell today from Alabama put up 43 at like 1%. Felt pretty good about that. But then you see Terrace Reed. My God, Terrace, 31 points. 16 defensive rebounds, 11 offensive rebounds. Quick math, carry the 1. Jesus, 27 rebounds. How could that be? That's a lot of rebounds. I put up a 70 burger there for DraftKings scoring. Feels like that should be about 100, honestly. But what an absolute star he was today. Alex Caravan with 22. Solid game for Braylon Mullins. Solo ball still unplayable. You take away a player like Silas Memory and Solo still doesn't score in double digits. Blech. Blech. Don't like it. Eric Reed only played 5 minutes. I expected him to play like 17 today. He did get into a bunch of foul trouble. And then, I mean, Terrace Reed, the game was close, and Terrace Reed's having the game of his life. So, what can I say? But good on UConn. That's going to be a pretty solid game there against UCLA. It'll be physical, if nothing else. They'll need Tyler DeBilladou. Down in the South, Florida took care of business. Prairie View A&M, they were tied 14-14. And it was like, look out for my Panthers. Everybody doubting them in the play-in game. They come through for us. Florida's too good. 114-55. That's how you dispatch of a 16 seed. That's how, back in my day, back in the 90s, 16 seeds, they didn't really compete at the level we're seeing now. I do like them knocking off top seeds, but, a team like Florida should be able to do that. Very balanced effort. It was good to see Micah Hanlogden have a really good game. So they advance. Iowa holds Clemson. About the ugliest game you could possibly see. Did I see there was like no fast break points in that one? Let me see. That can't be right, can it? Let's see. I feel like I heard somebody say that. And that wouldn't surprise me, but it actually considering the opponents, but Jesus, two of the slower teams there. Slow pace game, 67-61, no fast break points. Wow. Yeah, so apparently that is true. 0 fast break points in a 67-61 contest. Good God, that is absolutely sickening. So they do move on. Good on them. They'll be playing Florida. Good luck trying to stop that. Vanderbilt playing Nebraska. 5-4 matchup. Nebraska took care of business as Troy. We knew they would. Vanderbilt, a really strong effort. Duke Miles had a pretty bad game against McNeese, and it was closer than a lot of us thought, myself included. But Tyler Tanner picked him up like he always does. AK-47 had a good game. McLaughlin had a good game. Like, Vandy's got some dudes. They're fairly deep. So interesting matchup. We'll delve into that one a little bit more. Illinois took care of business against Penn. They were too sick, too injured. TJ Power was, completely exhausted. Had what I believe to be as close to mono as you can get without actually having mono. VCU, hell of a comeback, amazing comeback against North Carolina to win 82-78. The big story there was the fact that Terrence Hill, who's pretty much tailor-made for this tournament, coming off the bench, playing 40 minutes in the overtime there, 34 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists. He was absolutely magnificent. I love Terrence Hill. When Underdog posts props, we'll take a look. If he's at 15.5 again, I doubt he will be. We're just slamming the over. The total in this one, I think I saw 151, 152. I like the over in this one for sure. And Illinois, they took care of business. Like we said, the big star in that one, David Mirkovich, monster game. Not quite a Terrace Reed level game by any means, but he did have 29 and 17. Pretty damn good, if I do say so myself. The bottom half of the South here, Texas A&M, who beat another team, St. Mary's, who was extremely sick. All of their guys, Paulius Moroskas and Mikey Lewis, were both horrendous. St. Mary's early exit from the tournament, meaning second round or first round, now 6 straight tourneys. Houston, dispatched of Idaho. Idaho under 56.5. We cashed that one. We cashed the 23.5 point spread. Houston versus Texas A&M. It'll be a little close, definitely, and we'll get into that one more too, but I like Houston to advance. Moving over to the top half in the West, Arizona took care of business against Long Island yesterday. Utah State got the win over Villanova. Put some respect on Mountain West in their conference. High Point, and the kind of surprising, of course, the hindsight captains all said, well, Wisconsin was obvious. That's fine. Wisconsin with their guard play should have railroaded High Point there, but High Point, I'll give them all the credit in the world. They're built well, they play well, they have guys, and they can absolutely compete with Arkansas. We saw it. Hawaii, they didn't have the athletes, they didn't have the athleticism, and their threes weren't really falling. Dre Bullock did as much as he could there for Hawaii yesterday. They ended up losing by, nearly 20 points against Arkansas. High Point does have the athletes. Cameron Fletcher here, Absolutely great game. We're going to talk about that one as length as well. Definitely like High Point. I think they're live, but ultimately Arkansas is going to be the one. Texas beat BYU. Now, I said on this show last Sunday during the bracket reveal, I said to Adam, hey, we didn't have any play-in 11 seed winners advance to the second round. It's the first time in like 4 years. Would it really shock us if the Texas NC State winner, I didn't believe Miami, Ohio, and SMU winner truly had a chance, but if the Texas NC State winner beat BYU, made their way to the second round, and possibly threatened for a Sweet 16, would we be that surprised? I didn't think so. Adam said he would be, and that's fair. I'm not like trying to put him out there or anything, but it just shows you these 11 seed winners, especially a team like Texas that has the pieces, can get hot, and actually showed up defensively against BYU, which was a shock. Now they've got a tough matchup here against Gonzaga. Gonzaga played with their food a little bit. Ended up dispatching of Kennesaw State by 9, but it took some second half heroics. My man Davis Fogel had a nice game. This is the one where Tyon Grant Foster may have to play 30-plus minutes. We saw Jalen Worley have a nice game yesterday, but Grant Foster, we're going to talk about him a lot. I think this might be a game to really look at him. Miami, let's go. I took it in the shorts in the ACC tournament, backing Miami. They absolutely got waxed by Virginia. Malik Renew had a horrible game, and they kind of go as Renew goes. And Trey Donaldson had a massive game tonight too, beating Missouri in St. Louis. I don't care where the game was. They were such I'd say a horrific matchup. And I did say this before. Horrific matchup for Missouri. The guard play there wasn't going to be able to match. Trey Donaldson's not getting the respect he deserves. He had a hell of a game. True Washington is a great player to have off the bench. Missouri, outside of Mark Mitchell and sometimes T.O. Barrett, who still has a lot of developing and maturation to go through, and he disappeared today. It was going to be tough for Missouri. And Miami, I thought it'd be like a 5-point win, something like that. They win by 14. So great win by the Canes. Purdue, Queens was in it for a while. I thought Queens could cover the 25.5, 24.5. I really did. Purdue, Oscar Clough. Here's the thing about Purdue. If Oscar Clough has been fully unlocked like this, because remember in the non-con, he was fantastic. Once they got to conference play, he really struggled, had to adjust. He's unlocked that pre-conference plays version of himself, the South Dakota State version of himself. The last 3 or 4 games, he's been one of the best players on the floor. Braden Smith, of course, delivering assists left and right. TKR had a nice game. Queens doesn't play defense. Miami does. But if Oscar Clough is playing like he did today, let me pull up his stat line real quick. I have it off the top of my head. I know he put up nearly 40 fantasy points. Did have him on one of the secondary slates there. Only 22 minutes, 9 points, 11 rebounds, 5 assists, and 4 blocks. Just a massive performance from him. TKR had 25 and 9. Braden Smith 26 and 8. CJ Cox had a pretty nice game, 11 and 4. He got in the mix. It was good to see. Definitely think that version of Purdue is a little bit scary, certainly, but I do like Miami here. In my main bracket, I had 3 or 4. The one I would consider my main, which is what I have in like FTN and some other contests. I had Miami winning this matchup and advancing to Sweet 16, and I think it's still very possible. But if Oscar Clough is playing like that, it's scary. But Miami has the front court and the defense to really rattle Purdue. Queens just didn't. All right, down here in the Midwest, we've got Michigan taking on St. Louis. Should be a great game. St. Louis absolutely assaulted Georgia. Michigan, Howard pushed them for a while. Howard's a really good team. Let's just put it out there. Only complaint here with this one is, damn, it is the first game in the morning. St. Louis had to play late in the night yesterday. Would have liked to have seen maybe the Michigan State game with Louisville be the first one, which would have had this one start a little bit later. I know why, and they get it because, you get these first 2 games, they're island games, then 2 or 3 games in the afternoon at the same time. Everybody's going to be watching this one closely, myself included. Michigan versus St. Louis should be a really fun game. Lots of fantasy goodness. Texas Tech got the win over Akron, a convincing win, man. The position I built for futures on Texas Tech was really quite impressive. I have to pat myself in the back. And it looked really good, and I'd feel astonishingly great about them if JT Toppin was not out. They're still playing extremely good, and they're live against Alabama abso-freaking-lutely. It's just a tough situation there without him. Alabama, of course, without Aiden Holloway. Aiden Sherrill, what a fucking performance today. 15 points, 15 rebounds. Love Sherrill there. Amari Allen's having the freshman wall. Sherrill with the 1 or 2% ownership. Allen about 20%. I love Amari Allen, don't get me wrong, and I used him a lot this year, but he just hit that freshman wall hard. LeBaron Philon taking on Christian Anderson. That's going to be worth the price of admission. Tennessee took care of Miami, Ohio. Miami, Ohio doesn't have to hang their head, and nobody should talk any kind of trash about them whatsoever. Great season that they had under Travis Steele, Lexington Steele. They beat SMU. They end up winning 2 quad one games, I think. Tennessee's just a bad matchup for them. Crazy thing is Nate Ament is in so much pain from the prior injury that they didn't even need to use him. Tennessee's Gillespie guard play. This is a tournament tailor-made for Jacoby Gillespie. JP Estrella, Felix Akpara, they picked him up. They built such a big lead by halftime that there was no reason to put Ament out there. So he was able to get some rest. They are going to need him against Virginia. Virginia was pushed to the brink by Wright State. Sam Lewis also had a horrific-looking injury early in the game. He did come back, so he was fine. Something to monitor there. But Tennessee versus Virginia, that should be actually a pretty good game. Kentucky getting the overtime win over Santa Clara. I don't know your guys' opinion. You guys can drop the comments, those that are watching live, and if you're on demand, drop a comment as well. There's no in the middle here. There's only two sides, and I've noticed that everybody's either on this one side or the other. Now, one side is Herb Sendek clearly called timeout after the made three. The refs were not looking at him. There's some chatter about, well, he was trying to signal timeout to the wrong ref. What does that even mean, the wrong ref? Just the official should be looking at the coach. How many times after a made shot do they call timeout? 90% of the time, it's at the defense. I guess you could argue Herb Sendek should have been, hey, on a made shot, we're calling a timeout. Turn and look at me. I'm going to make the signal. I don't know. Also, Mahi and a couple others, a little bit of showboating after the made three, gave Otega Awe a pretty clean look that he stroked. Awe, sorry, I mispronounced his name and get trolled like the other night. And then the other part is, or the other side of this equation is that Sendek didn't signal to the correct ref. It's not on him. They miscommunication should have been telling them ahead of time, blah, 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 whatever. I'm in the camp that the official should have absolutely awarded the timeout to allow the defense to set. If the defense set, I highly doubt Ortega gets that good of a look. And we're talking about Santa Clara advancing here. Alan Graves was in foul trouble all the first half, 3 first-half fouls, which is absolutely insane. But he had a monster game in the second half and carried them almost all the way back, but they just gassed out in overtime. It's a damn shame, but Santa Clara, with Gonzaga going to the revised Pac-10/Pac-12, the WCC, there's going to be a power vacuum there. St. Mary's, Santa Clara, perhaps San Francisco, but we'll see Santa Clara and Herb Sendek in the tournament again. Especially if they're able to keep Alan Graves. That's a big if, because Alan Graves is going to get a lot of offers of NIL from other teams. Iowa State dispatched Tennessee State. Big worry here. Josh Jefferson was injured 3 minutes into the game, had a boot on, could not play the rest of the way. They didn't need him. The other thing was Tom and Lipsey, foul trouble all game. So their two best players, basically, no minutes for them. They still are able to take care of business against the OVC champion Tennessee State. No real surprise there, but problematic going into this second round matchup against Kentucky, which we're going to go into more in depth tomorrow for that slate. Kentucky has 3, 4, 5 big men. No Jefferson. You've got to rely more on Buchanan. Now, Blake Buchanan and Killian Torrey had the best games of their season by far. But Tennessee State, Kentucky, a little bit of a difference there. I do want to be clear. I don't have any trust or faith in this Kentucky team. I think that if Lipsey, solves his fouling issue that he had today and his kind of inaccuracy from an offensive standpoint all season, they should still be competitive with or without Josh Jefferson. But certainly not a survivor pick there for me. Speaking of survivor, those of you who are still in it, we were able to advance today, picking Virginia, which got a little scary there, / hairy there, but we did get through with Virginia. And then the other one, God, who was it? I can't remember. Illinois yesterday. Michigan State yesterday. Can't I remember? Whatever. It's not important. But getting some questions about Survivor stuff for tomorrow, who to pick. A bunch of people have brought up Iowa State, but I would just be very, very cautious there if Jefferson can't go. That's a danger zone, if you will. The obvious second round Survivor picks for me, I would say obviously try to save the 1 seeds as best you can. 2 seeds you might not be able to save. Like I would want to save Houston here, but if you can't, you can't. So you gotta advance as best you can. Try to save UConn if you can there against UCLA. The St. John's Kansas game, that's a tough one. But I think Arkansas against High Point, as good as High Point is, I think Arkansas is a very strong Survivor pick. So I'd be looking at them. And then I would also be strongly looking at Tennessee over Virginia as a Survivor pick. I do like the Vols and Rick Barnes. I'm ready to get my heart broken. You guys know how it is. Or Gonzaga against Texas. I do think Gonzaga takes care of business there. But Arkansas being the top overall Survivor pick. If you have to burn a 2 seed or you have to burn a 1 seed just to get yourself into the next round, you got to do what you got to do, because a couple of these second round matchups, Vanderbilt, Nebraska, Texas Tech, Alabama, could go either way. Now, I did use Illinois yesterday as one of my Survivor picks. And if I didn't, I wouldn't use them against VCU. I actually think VCU has a really strong chance of getting to the Sweet 16. So that's mine for Survivor talk. Let's get into the slate here. Let's do this. We'll pull up some projections here. Haven't ran the full, if it'll even open. Haven't ran the full DVP filter. Haven't edited all the minutes yet. So this isn't quite where it needs to be. Let's get rid of this. It's not even working anyways. All right, done. There we go. Okay. No, this is loading. There it goes. There we go. All right, let's get into it. 8-game slate. Let's talk about it. Some good prize pools that, the people are getting, tired out already. There was a decent overlay on the last couple of slates today, so keep an eye out for that. So you have the 8-game slate, the 6-game night slate, and the 3-game late slate. So we'll have 3 to play there. 20K to first at the $20 level, 4,700 people. Then you have the 3K to first, 44, the 10K to first, 222, 1.5K to first, $100 GPP. Couple of things here to make some money on the min max, a bunch of other stuff. So look out for that. Congratulations to those of you who have been advancing through Mania. That is now to the Sweet 16 in Mania. All right, 8-game slate. Let's talk about it. First game to kick us off, St. Louis versus Michigan, bright and early at 9:10 in the morning here on the West Coast. Just brutal. Right now, it's a 12.5 point spread with a total of 161.5. If that dips at any point, or you can get around the 159.5 range, that's a good play to the over. I think it's still fine at 161 as well. Both of these teams have a real legitimate chance of scoring in the 90s. So I do like the over there immediately. Let's pull up Michigan, so you guys have something to look at here, and St. Louis. Now, again, I haven't fully edited minutes, but this is going to give you an idea. I haven't ran the DVP stuff as well. So there's a lot of guys on the slate who project pretty well. There are some pricing errors. Egregious, maybe not, but definitely some looks that we can get to here. All right, let's start off with the Michigan side. A really dominant performance. Like Howard is great. I loved Howard. Glad they got to be in the playing game there. They actually had a pretty strong game. Right, Bryce Harris, 21 points. Cam Gillis, 21 points. Cedric Taylor, 19. My man Osi Okoje had a pretty bad game for his standards, but still, they competed for a long time. Yaxel, not a very good game for him. A more competitive game here against St. Louis and Robbie Avila. Expect a better game from him. But the big story was Ada Amara. Mara with 19 points, 7 rebounds, 6 assists, and 3 blocks. The most complete game I've seen from him ever. Watched a lot of Mara. I use him a lot. Love this. Use him all the time, really. If he's going to be an offensive weapon like that, watch out. He's a really strong look in all formats. Priced only at 7.4. They just did not move him up too much after the 42. He was 7.3. He's only priced up at 100 more. So definitely like Mara. You got Morez Johnson there at 7.1. He also put up a 40, 21 and 10. Two very strong plays across the board. Yaxel sitting there at 8.5. He drops 400 after a 20. I feel like Michigan, depending on how close this game actually ends up, I feel like we're going to see another somewhat passive performance from Yaxel. I almost feel like they're going to continue to force feed Mara a little bit just to get his confidence up and his offense, because you're not defending this team. Yaxel can hit threes. Morez Johnson can hit mid-range jumpers, get to the basket. Usually Mara's one of those guys where he's got to get dunks, putbacks close to the basket, but he was actually showing off some post moves yesterday and making things happen. So continue to build up his confidence. I think Yaxel is more of a secondary look, but probably everyone will think that. So he is a pretty intriguing alt team build. Maybe you get reduced ownership there because most will say, well, why not just go Mara or Johnson? And I think that's going to be the prevailing thought process across the board. Elliot Cadeau there at 6'4". I'm not really using him too much. He's going to get a ton of assists. We can look at his assist props, but overall as an option there at that price point, just not doing it for me. Instead, we've got value here. Trey McKinney, who did play 25 minutes against Howard, 16 out of fantasy points, 10 real, 4 for 7 from the field, but just 1 of 4 from threes. I am going to be looking at his over 1.5 3-point line. It is plus money once again. Didn't come to fruition against Howard, but I do think it could come to fruition here, so I'm going to be hitting that as a prop. Roddy Gale down there at 3.4, and then Namari Burnett as a starter at 3.6. Now, Burnett, second game in a row, he's put up over 20 fantasy points, and Gale, who's been pretty hit or miss this season, also put up 23 against Howard there with 14, 6 of 7 from the field, and hit 2 threes. So if you're a mass multi-enterer, you definitely want to rotate through, get a little bit of McKinney, get a little bit of Gale, some Burnett there. If I had to choose one for my main build, I don't think, even though Gale's almost min price, I don't think it can be him just because he has that subatomic floor. Could really give you 2 fantasy points here, especially against STL's defense that does force a lot of turnovers. I probably would still go to McKinney at the 3.9 just because, if he gets hot in his scoring, they really will need him out there. And then it could be a Burnett game. Like Burnett, he can get hot. Like we literally said this the Wednesday night show with Mike, like Nambari Burnett, if he's going to come out hitting a couple threes, he's liable to have, 15 plus points in the first half. He had a ton. He scored 15 for the game, but he did have a lot early, 3 of 4 from downtown. So we'll look at his 3-point props as well here later on. But definitely some value there. And the Michigan guys overall are just really quite underpriced, all things considered. And you can see here, projections-wise, Gale, Kenny, Mara amongst the top 3. Morez Johnson is up there. A lot of guys over 4X, and there's been such high scores lately. We want to kind of adjust where we're at. Normally during the season, we're happy with 4X, and once we get to the Elite 8 range, we'll be happy with 4X again. But right now, we need to shoot for the higher ceiling, and we need guys who can really get that 4.5 to 5X number. So we want to kind of raise our qualifications and expectations, or specifications, I should say. Didn't mean to get all cat in the hat on you guys there. On the St. Louis side, definitely some interest. When I look at how the Howard game played out, a ton of threes. Howard shot nearly 50%. Bryce Harris hit 4. Cedric Taylor hit 3. My man Osei hit 2. Travell Bryson hit 2 off the bench. Like, just a ton of threes. And you might remember going back to the Big Ten game against Wisconsin, in which Michigan did eke out a 3-point win, they had a tough time defending the 3 in that one. Wisconsin shot 42%. Austin Rapp made 6 threes. He was completely unguarded for 4 of them. And that problem reared its ugly head against Howard. They didn't close out, and they were hitting threes, and they kept it a respectable score and covered. You also can look back. Bielauskas had 3 threes in that game as well. You can look at the Purdue game, which they won or lost in the final. Purdue didn't shoot particularly well from 3, but Fletcher Lawyer did at 3 for 4. He kept getting loose, and there's seemingly one player each game that they're just not able to defend. Ohio State, same thing. Then they beat them in a close game in the Big Ten tournament. Ohio State shot about 35% from long range, but 3 different players had 2, Mobley, Thornton, and Royal. So there's a lot to like here from the St. Louis side. And because St. Louis has a ton of 3-point shooters, they're the 2nd team per KenPom in 3-point efficiency and the 7th best defensive efficiency from a 3-point perspective. So defensively, they're definitely there. Offensively, they're strong. They play at a top 20 pace. Felt really good about the conversation I had with Adam on air a couple of nights ago that, hey, the St. Louis team almost feels like they sleptwalked through the last couple of games. Almost feel like they had a switch they could turn on. And they did that exactly against Georgia. And they shell-shocked them so fast, so early. Georgia just couldn't get back going. And we know they make a lot of mistakes, and they did. And St. Louis just a complete performance there, winning 102-77. So who are some of the 3-point shooters we might be able to identify against Michigan? Well, Trey Green, who shoots 46% from beyond the arc, which is 9th best in the country. You have Brady Dunlop, who shoots 43%. Probably won't have enough minutes to matter, but he is a very strong 3-point shooter. Ishan Sharma, who's shooting 43%, top 60 in the country. Deion Brown shooting 38% from long range, was a good number, but he's like the 6th worst on the team. You just can't make shots, Dion, at 38%. You're no good. Robbie Avila, 41%. These are all on volume, guys. The only ones that really don't shoot threes or haven't shown it is Kellen Thames, who's a fantasy point per minute monster because of his ability to drive, and Amari Kotri, who can fill it up in multiple categories. Neither of them are particularly great 3-point shooters. But then you also have Quentin Jones, who's shooting 37%. Terrible considering you got a guy who's shooting 46%, 43 and 41 on the team, but no, 36 and 38% are great. So St. Louis has a myriad of options. If I had to peg one that would be the Austin Rapp of this game, I don't think it will be Trey Green because they know what an assassin he is. Sharma off the bench is pretty obvious. I do think this is a game where Quentin Jones gets a little hot. We've seen Quentin Jones have some pretty big games through the season, but he's been a little bit quiet offensively for the last month of the season. He did have 25.5 fantasy points there against Georgia in that game, 9 real points, but he filled it up. 4 rebounds, 5 assists, a couple of stocks, made a 3 there. He's just been really struggling offensively in his shot. 0 for 6 against George Mason, 1 for 8 against George Washington, 1 for 4 against Dayton, and then he did have the 2 for 3 game against Dayton the second time when they lost, and then 1 for 4 against Georgia. So I think Jones at 5K is a really intriguing play. Trey Green's there at only 4.6. He's obviously in play. You could use either of those guys in your main build against Michigan, in my opinion. And the projections show that as well. McCautry's a strong GBP look at 6.5. Sharma at 4.3 is a kind of an alt play. And then Kellen Thames, his athleticism, man, he has a major issue with fouls. His foul rate's been extremely high, especially lately. And he does turn it over at a pretty high rate as well. But, man, that guy can get after it at the rim, grab rebounds, put back. So he's got to be at least in the consideration and in your player pool at 4.8. Again, if you're doing the MME thing, you can just rotate through values here. There's a lot in this game alone, and you could do a game stack here, and I think feel pretty good about it. As I mentioned, I think both teams probably cruise up to the over, and I'm thinking Michigan might put up 100 here, with St. Louis putting up 90. So we'll see how that goes. Definitely want multiple pieces here, 2 minimum, maybe even 3 or 4. All right, moving on to the next game here. We have Louisville versus Michigan State. Hey, my man, Johnny popping in. Love it. Love to see you, Johnny. Wish this was the Blog Talk radio days when I used to be able to answer the phone lines there and push you through. But appreciate your support, brother. Smash the like and sub. You are the man. And Johnny, Johnny is a longtime friend of the show and friend of mine. When I went to Vegas, we hung out. Known him for, gosh, we're old, Johnny. I've known you for what is it now, 12 years? 12, maybe 12 years at this point. So I have a pretty big trust in him for his reads, and we futures portfolios, he and I usually go in on those together. We have multiple positions on Michigan. So he does say Avila will get in foul trouble. Pretty good chance of that. I think, I didn't talk about him quite a lot, but just now, this is a game that does worry me a little bit about him. At 7'6", he's very much playable, but and he can make threes as well, as I mentioned. But I do worry about him, and I think the front court advantage that Michigan has is going to be pretty prevalent here, because when you look at St. Louis size, I was about to move on to the next game, but this reminded me, looking at their size, outside of Avila, if he does get into foul trouble, maybe they have to play Paul Atinio, who's 6'9", Brady Dunlap, who's more of a finesse shooter. He's 6'7". He's actually like the third tallest player on the team. They're going to be in big trouble. They don't have the bodies to guard these. Mari McCautry and Kellen Thames are both about 6'5", 6'6". They play a lot of power forward for this team. This should be another game in which Mara absolutely dominates down low. So thank you for reminding me of that, because, yeah, size does matter, regardless of what your lady might say. Yeah, that was a great game. Terrace Reed, more rebounds than Furman as a team. Just absolutely sicko stuff. Mara will keep dominating. He actually has improved this year. So, yeah, his offensive game especially has gotten a lot better. All right, let's go on to the next game here, which is Louisville versus Michigan State. Total of 151.5. Michigan State currently 4.5-point favorite. Now, when this matchup was known yesterday, I did say if it's within 4 or 5, I think it's a slam for Michigan State. Now, here we are, minus 4.5. Michigan State, a very strong look here. I know sometimes it can be a little bit hard to trust that team, but I like that it seemed like early on against North Dakota State, they were going to play around, right? It was like, oh God, here we go again. I had them in Survivor. Like, I don't want to deal with this. And there was about a 5-6 minute period there where it looked like, North Dakota State might be live. And then quickly, within 30 seconds, Carson Cooper just kind of asserted himself, and it was him who ended up being the dominant force in that front court. He had a monster game. It really took care of business. I like how focused Michigan State looked there. You can tell what kind of run that Tom Izzo's crew might make when that first round game. A lot of times you'll see them kind of not execute, make mistakes like, it looks like an early exit this year. I do feel like they could make a little bit of a run here, or at least get to the game against UConn in the Sweet 16. So definitely like them. Carson Cooper there at 6'9". We'll probably see a little bit of chasing going on after he puts up a 40. He's actually put up 24 or more fantasy points in 3 of his last 4 and 30 plus in 2 of his last 3. So Cooper definitely asserting himself quite well, rebounding at a high level, also adding assists, hitting shots. He's very strong look there, especially against Louisville's front court. Now, the angle for me with why I thought South Florida would win against Louisville, ended up covering. So, we know the old adage here, great teams cover, right? But the reason I was on South Florida to begin with, and especially my guy, Isaiah Nelson, who had a pretty strong game before he fouled out, 22-9, was that the Louisville front court just doesn't have the experience of some of the teams that they're coming across here. And Nelson, again, had a really strong performance there. Joseph Pinion kept driving to the hoop. He'd also hit a bunch of threes. He did really well. But the front court for Louisville is just a little inexperienced here. Sananda Frew, who didn't start yesterday, they started Vangelis Sucris instead. He did play 25 minutes off the bench. He did have a double-double with 10 points, 10 rebounds. And he did quite well in that spot. But you're going to be asking him as a, more of a inexperienced player. I always feel like he's a freshman. He's actually a junior from Germany, but he doesn't have that tournament experience, that big game experience that Michigan State's guys do have. So I'm a little bit concerned about them. It would be smart for them to play Connie Roos a little bit more. I thought they might, against South Florida. He ended up playing just 11 minutes, so probably not going to see much from him. And then Ali Khalifa, the 7-footer, we might see a few more minutes out of him as well, just to help counter this Michigan State front court. But when you look at their front court, Khalifa, Roofs, Frew, Zugris, like that just isn't striking the fear of anything into our hearts. Adrian Woolley had an awful game against South Florida. Not a lot of trust in him. He's another young player who was great at Kennesaw State last year. Imagine if he was still there. Jeez, Kennesaw State might have actually beating Gonzaga yesterday. Ryan Conwell, Javon Hadley, like were productive days overall as a group. But really, my Isaac McNeely just hitting 1,000,000 threes was really what put them over the top against South Florida. So I suspect Izzo will have somebody paying extra special attention to McNeely. This could be a game in which Conwell kind of pops off. But front court wise, I think is what we really want to look at here. And the prices do kind of reflect that. Keeler at 8K, probably not going there personally. Cooper, again, at 6'9", is your most playable. You have a 6'4K price Cohen Carr, but a little bit on the floor side there. Doesn't have the upside we're necessarily looking for. And then Jeremy Fears at 9'2". Not really paying up for him either. If he ends up having a big game, good on him. He has been on an actual tear. The blowout game, so he lost some minutes, only put up 25 in the first round. But before that, 4 straight games over 37 fantasy points. Guy just has a astronomically high assist rate. Turns it over a lot as well, but he gets about 10 to 11 assists per game lately. But it's a pretty steep price. I think we'll see a bit of ownership on McNeely, still under 5K. A popular McNeely I usually like to get away from, but we gotta say 4 of his last 5 games, he's absolutely shattered value at this price, putting up 27 plus fantasy points. So Isaac McNeely is in play, but a chalky Isaac McNeely definitely makes me scared against this Spartans team. Michael Brown is out for at least one more round. This might be it for Louisville. I kind of think it is. So they will not have him. That's obviously going to be a big blow. Fears will probably check Conwell a bit, and a lot of Woolley. That's why I'm not too high on Woolley for this game, even though at 5'3" is at least intriguing. The model typically likes Adrian Woolley a lot, but I'm definitely lower on him. Overall, have some value on the Spartan side. Outside of the 3 bigs that we know of, Kohler, Cooper, and Carr, Jordan Scott has been looking pretty well recently, playing big minutes. He had some fouls and only ended up playing 16 minutes in the blowout game, but prior to that, he played 30-plus minutes in 2 of his last 3. So if he gets back to playing around 30 minutes here at 4.6, he's definitely interesting for the same reason that Carr, Cooper, and Cohen are. Or Keeler, excuse me, because of this front court of Louisville. I just don't believe that they're going to get it after it on defense, and I think they're very susceptible there. It'd be wise for the Spartans to really attack the paint as much as possible and get themselves to the free throw line a lot as well. Kerr Tang is there at 4-1. Not a good performance at all in 18 minutes against North Dakota State. Only shot 1 of 5. He does that sometimes, but at 4-1, I do kind of like him here in this spot. Especially if he kind of trends into the mid-20s range for minutes. He's shown enough offensively that they're going to use him more, especially over the likes of guys like Cam Ward, whose minutes have gone down dramatically the last 3 or 4 games. Guys like Trey Ford, who don't play much. And then, again, we're seeing Scott kind of see his minutes diminish a little bit. I think the actual player who sees his minutes go down is Jackson Keeler. I think he's more in the mid-20s range here instead of 30, 35. So I'm a little bit lower on Keeler as I am compared to the rest of the team. All right, moving on to TCU versus Duke. This is a game right here. Again, I foresee TCU pushing Duke in the way that the Taco Fall UCF team did Zion Williams' iteration of Duke. So should be a relatively competitive game. Right now, it's an 11.5 point spread. No chance I'm not betting TCU at 11 plus 11.5. Total of 140.5, which I do think the over is live there, but plus 11.5 for TCU. I'm all over that. Could be wrong, certainly, but they're still banged up. Caleb Foster's not walking through that door. Patrick Mbangba, who we figure probably similar to Michael Brown, not coming back until at least the Sweet 16. He has officially moved up to questionable for this game, but I would be very surprised if we see him play. They definitely need him, especially against this TCU front court. If they don't have Patrick for this one, it's absolutely a live possibility of TCU winning, but definitely covering. I don't want to go as far to say that they will win, but 11.5 points for TCU, give me that all damn day. TCU's guards, I'm pretty on record saying that they're weak. I'm actually surprised they got the best of Ohio State in all categories. But Duke's backcourt also not particularly very scary. So TCU's deficiency there shouldn't hurt them quite as much, but I think their front court can hang here with Cameron Boozer. The X factor is really going to be Caden Boozer, priced at 5'3", absolutely phenomenal. All season living in the shadow of his twin brother Cameron. Losing minutes, kind of an afterthought, but you look at since March 7th, he scored at least 15 or more fantasy points. The two of his last three, he scored 29 or more, and then he's played 29, 22, 38, 40, and 39 minutes. 3 straight games with no Foster, no Patrick Mbangwa. He's played almost every single minute. Price there at 5'3". I know he's going to be popular, but I really don't care. And you can see here 5'3" at about 36 minutes. I mean, shit, he's playing 38, 39. Let's just go ahead and give him the full meal deal. We have almost a 6x return. That's what we want. So Caden Boozer is absolutely a slam dunk play for me here. I'm backing off a little bit from Kaminia. I don't like what I saw out of him there, youngster. I think the moment of the tournament got to him a little bit. We know Damesar a little bit offensively challenged. Malik Brown's just a little bit priced up at 5'6", although it's playable. Just not there with him yet. And Cameron Boozer at 11K, kind of a play where I do think because of how close this one could be, you want to really strongly consider him. I talked about it during the show when we were picking bracket spots and working through and picking the selections. I said second round in my bracket right up for FTN. Second round Cameron Boozer could put up a 60 spot here. And I do truly believe that. And you can look, not that far-fetched, at 37 minutes. We have him at 56. I think he puts up a monster performance. Will it be 32 and 20 like Terrace Reed, 27, whatever it was? Maybe not. But I do foresee him putting up 30-plus points. I do foresee him grabbing 10-plus rebounds here, maybe 3 or 4 assists, like a real legitimate just slate-breaking performance where he may push a 70. So with that being said, we might have to just roll both boozers here. TCU side here, let's do this. So Xavier Edmonds there at 6'8", David Punch at 7'9", Micah Robinson at 5'7". Those are the three that I mostly would be considering and will be rostering in some capacity there. Looking at what they did in the close win over Ohio State, Micah Robinson had a really big first half. He ended up scoring 18 points and 5 boards, but I believe he had 15 or 16 at halftime. Really strong performance there. Jaden Pierre, awful game for him. Brock Harding, he was mostly invisible second half. And then Tanner Tolson didn't do a damn thing either. But Xavier Edmonds, 16 and 8. David Punch, 16 and 13 rebounds along with 3 blocks. Everything goes through Punch and Edmonds. The problem is foul trouble for Xavier Edmonds. He projects really, really well. When we look at it, 29, 30 minutes, great. But if he gets into the early 2-foul territory, we're going to be really screwed with him. He is priced under 7K. He is an extraordinarily great play if we think he can stay on the floor for 30-plus minutes. I don't know if I'll get there in my main just because of the high variance with his actual playing time. But you can be sure one of my alt builds, multiple alt builds, will include Xavier Edmonds. I do like David Punch at 7'9". It's a little pricey for me on him, but he's going to have to come up big here. And then I would just caution a little bit about chasing the Micah Robinson performance, but at 5'7", he's absolutely an option. And I think I'd rather play him than some of the secondary Duke guys for what it's worth. But you could come out of this game with a double Boozer Punch stack that feels pretty good. So overall, I'm certainly going to be involved quite a bit in this game, and I think it will be close. What's that? Let me close that screen so we don't have to hear that. All right, moving on to our next game here, flying right on through. Texas A&M versus Houston. This one is a total of 142.5. Houston right now as a 10.5 point favorite. This is a weird one because I think if Houston is executing, playing the kind of smothering defense they did yesterday, I do think they probably win by 15 plus points here. But I'm a little concerned for some. I have this nagging feeling that Rashawn Agee is just going to have this absolutely, obliteration of a game against Houston. Um, where I'm comfortable taking the Houston side here is the guard play though. Texas A&M's guards, they were pretty non-existent for a large portion of the game against St. Mary's. They led it wire to wire, never really in danger, but Pop Isaacs only took 4 shots. He was terrible. Rylan Griffin was terrible. Marcus Hill non-existent. Ali Dibbo looked pretty nice off the bench, but for the most part, Rashawn Agee just hard carried. 22 points, 9 rebounds, 3 assists, had a steal. They had some guys come off the bench to hit a three, like Zach Clements. But overall, nobody on this Texas A&M team, I think, is good enough shot creation wise for themselves or others to really be able to survive this Houston defense. So a lot of it's just going to be going inside to Agee. He's done a nice job, especially over the last maybe 2 or 3 games, staying out of foul trouble. This is one where I'd be a little concerned with him. He's more of a luxury play than I think an actual, main team lock and load type of look. It is 8-4, which is fair price for him. But considering the matchup and the lack of consistency around him, we might just see Houston double him all game. On the Houston side, the projections are pretty in love with Houston as usual. And we've seen that a lot with Texas A&M slates. Their opponents typically look pretty good. You can see here Manny Sharp at 5'3", Kingston Flemings at 8'2", Jojo Tugler at 6'1", Milos Uzan 5'5", Chris Sanak at 6'6". All pretty cheap prices for their starters. I think JoJo at 6'1", you could probably make the case for being a little uncomfortable paying that for him, especially when it's only 500 more for Sanak, or you can go down and pay less for Manny Sharp or Milos Uzan. Expect Sharp to be extremely chalky on this slate at 5'3". I mean, before I put the filter on and run the DVP stuff, he's projecting at 6x, so he should obviously be a little bit higher. He did shoot well against Idaho, so that was good to see. Put up a solid 27. So offensively, you really need him to hit shots. He doesn't necessarily do enough from a peripheral standpoint, but at 5'3", if he scores, 15, 16 real, you're going to be feeling pretty good. So we're all over him. I do like Kingston Flemings too, that 8-2. Whenever he goes into this low 8K range, upper 7s, which has been a damn long time, you got to consider him. I mean, he's been basically a 9K player for the last 2 months of the season. Coming off a 35. He has cooled off a little bit prior to that Idaho game, just because we've seen the offensive explosion from JoJo Tugler lately, and some of the bench pieces that they've been using, Mercy Miller, Chase McCarty, Khalifa Sacco. So it's kind of cut into his production a little bit, but 8-2 is just a way too cheap price. I feel like with Flemings, we're going to see people get a little too cute. I'm going to roster Sharp. He's way cheaper. Flemings has been okay. I can get through the slate without him, and then he's going to drop a big score here, and there's going to be a lot of regret, and he's going to end up being 15% maybe at most. So I'm going to be pretty heavy on Flemings. I think the Houston stack makes a lot of sense. I don't necessarily want to go full stack here, 3 or 4, but the mini stack, as I like to call them, with a 2-man, Flemings and Sharp makes a lot of sense to me. You can fit Flemings with Boozer at 11K just because there's all this value, but you might end up having multiple St. Louis, Michigan values, which could work out very well. But if it plays out like yesterday, where you get a bunch of 14 to 17 scores, which still technically pays off for these sub 5K guys, I just don't think it'll be enough in these large field tournaments. So we'll see. But Flemings and Sharp are where my head's at there. All right, moving on to Texas versus Gonzaga. Just pull that up. All right, I really feel like this is going to be a tie on Grant Foster spot. We'll see. We'll see how it shakes out. Because of the location currently at, I can't pull up Gonzaga's line, so I'm just going to give you KenPom. KenPom's projection on that is 79.74. Sounds about right. The over is live in this one. Texas defensively, they're extremely challenged. We saw in the game against NC State, they tried their best to blow that one. I will say I was impressed with their second half defense on BYU, especially Kennard Davis, who was a complete non-factor. Once BYU went with the give it to AJ Devonta and let him work offense, basically the decision by Texas was to let no one else beat them, and they did a great job neutralizing Kebakaida. We saw nothing out of Kennard Davis in the second half. Rob Wright was just okay. So, they did show up defensively there. Do I think they're going to do that against Gonzaga too? Absolutely not. The pathway here, I think that will be the most popular, and you can see Mario St. Superior at 5'3", Jalen Warley at 5'1" after he just had a huge game, and then Graham Ike at nearly 10K. We see pockets of ownership on him every slate, regardless of opponent or price. So I still think on this 8-gamer, he probably touches 25% range ownership, so keep that in mind. I don't feel necessarily obligated to use him, especially with Modest Vakiaitis having such a huge performance last game. I think he's got the chops and the wherewithal to kind of, frustrate EK a little bit. That's really going to come down to who gets into foul trouble first. The player who's able to stay on the court while the other sits with 2 or 3 fouls is going to absolutely romp. So you GPP multi-enter guys, you absolutely want to somewhat chase that last Modest game and keep plugging EK out there. But as far as main team build single entry goes, MSS or Worley make a lot of sense. I personally think this is a tie on Grant Foster game. And I always like my man Davis Fogel. He's a little expensive at 6'6", but this time next year when he's 9K, you're going to yearn for these days. So enjoy them while you can, because Davis Fogel is an absolute star. Texas-wise, I don't want to use Jordan Pope. Way too inconsistent. He always is way too inconsistent. Had some big games to end the season there, but no thank you. Tremont Mark has put up 34 plus in each of their tournament games, including the 40 spot against BYU. He's just absolutely knocking down threes with reckless abandon right now, and also doing a good job getting himself to the line, generating points, making things happen. He's hitting some circus shots as well. So be careful with Mark at 5'8", Pope at 5'7", both strictly secondary options for me. Same with Modest and Dallin Swain. More of a luxury play than anything. He's putting up like low to mid 30s right now. Price is still pretty high. It's come down 300. So at 9.4, he's definitely a look. You always have to consider him, but it flirts with the triple double damn near every game. But because his price is so high, doesn't do a lot scoring wise lately. It's kind of brought his score down. We really need him to score in that 18 and 19 real range to really push him over the 40s. And you could definitely do it here, especially after what we saw at Kennesaw State. But you can be sure Mark Few will have his team completely ready. He has some younger, inexperienced players on this roster. Does have a lot of veterans as well. I think they were a little shocked against Kennesaw State and took them to the second half to really kind of shake things off. You can be sure they'll be very prepared for this game against Texas. So I think I'm going to really just end up on the Gonzaga side here. I was curious to see what the Kendall Weaver ownership might have looked like after the play in game 30. There was so much value yesterday that he ended up being pretty low owned. There wasn't a lot of chasers. So it just shows you how sharp the field kind of was with that. There was no chance I rostered him at all, regardless of price, right after that big game. I do actually think he's kind of intriguing here, especially considering he's going to play 20-plus minutes, but I'd rather take a St. Louis or Michigan value, to be clear. So let's move on from here. We've got VCU versus Illinois. This should be a good game. Yeah, Johnny, I agree. Brock Harding is a stiff. It's one way of putting it. Their backcourt up TCU is really not very good. And he thinks it's going to be an Isaiah Evans legacy game. It could be. I think Cam Boozer is going to absolutely dominate. He's going to have to. It'll be really smart to pound inside with Cam Boozer and get fouls on the punch and Edmond. All right, VCU versus Illinois. Total of 151.5. Again, best bet for me of the day, and I'll do this again at the end. Over 151.5. VCU and Illinois offense both features a litany of options who can score, and I think that defensively they'll be good, but I think both teams are going to put up a huge number here. I foresee this one being played in the 80s, so over 151.5 is a pretty big slam for me. It is also a 11.5 point spread. Give me VCU plus 11.5 all day long. I was one of the quote unquote lucky ones yesterday on VCU. Took a monumental comeback, but we got it. So looking at VCU first. Terrence Hill. All about Terrence Hill. Had him at it's 2 days in a row. We've had a pretty nice hit. Aiden Sherrill today at 1%. Terrence Hill yesterday at like 5%. I do like going back to him. More people are going to know about him, but I think his ownership will still be somewhat down because he did go up $400. He doesn't start, so that will turn people off automatically. But you saw in the OT there against UNC, he played 40 minutes, played 33 before that against Dayton. In a format like this where there is no tomorrow, with a loss, you absolutely have to put your best players and rotation on the floor. Expect Terrence Hill to play 38, 39, possibly the entire game. Well, he doesn't start, so he'll come in after a couple minutes, but I have him pegged for about 36 to 37 minutes. You can see here he makes value at just about 31. I haven't edited this yet, but at 35, 30 plus fantasy points, you can absolutely be sure. So I'm right back on him. I may have to make some sacrifices here with maybe my Houston stack or with the first game in Ade Mara, but Hill's absolutely not a guy that I feel we can fade right now. Not in March, not in this tournament, not with a guard like him who's tailor-made for this tournament. The other options, Barry Evans is still cheap, sub 5K. Nick Lewis is 5'2", Michael Bell 5'1", Brandon Jennings 5'6". They're okay options, but really what we saw yesterday from VCU and what I think we'll see tomorrow is a ton of usage for Terrence Hill. In fact, his usage in that game, pull this up here on KenPom. At one point, it was near 40%. It was Marcus Howard level is what it was. 35%. So, yeah, absolute just amazing game. 7 of 10 from long range, 6 of 13 inside the arc. Also added 5 rebounds, 5 assists. So a very complete game for him. Not a chase for me because I was on him. So it could be considered a chase for others, but we're all over Terrence Hill here against Illinois. Illinois side, I want to go right to Merkovich. David, don't call him Merkovich. He's awesome. If he has like a crazy tournament and Illinois makes a run, there's actually a fair amount of people who I respect in the field that think Illinois is going to go to the Final Four. I don't agree with that, but if they do, it'll be on the back of guys like, of course, Wagler, but David Markovich, who's coming off that huge 17 rebound game, 29 points, monster, absolute monster. You'll see Zvonimir Ivicevic still projects pretty well because he's priced so low. He's just keep in mind he's not going to get any plays for him. He has to get his points off of putbacks or easy dunks. But this is a game here against VCU who has a lot of driving guards where Ivicevic touches 22 minutes. I do think he puts up a pretty solid number. Not only via rebounding, which is his main pathway, but also through block shots, which VCU middle of the pack in terms of getting their shots blocked, but they just have so many players who like to drive. I see an opportunity and a pathway there for Big Z to definitely make value. At 8-2, Markovich, this is where you're going to get into some tough decisions because there is a really strong pool here. We are, 6 of 8 games through just about. We've talked about Mara, Morez on the Michigan side. For Duke, we like the Boozer twins. David Punch and Xavier Edmond are playable. We like the Houston stack with Flemings, who is underpriced. We like Tyan Grant Foster. Then we get into this Terrence Hill spot, and then all of a sudden at 8-2, Markovich, it's going to be really hard not to want to roster him just because he's still underpriced. He should be priced at 9K. This actually, what is this? The 8-2 price is not the most expensive. He was at one point in early November, 9.7, which is a pretty crazy price. That's because he put up a 60 against Colgate to start the season. But he has put up, this is DK points, 58, 34, 42, 31, 32 over his last 5. Just really strong, consistent stuff. 3 double-doubles in his last 6 games. Very strong play. Who out of the group will we have to sacrifice to get there? Cam Boozer? 11K is just so high. I know I just made the case for him to put up a 60 or 70, but if we save that 300, it then gets us, let's say, Merkovich, Flemings, who can both put up 40s here, instead of Boozer, semi-value piece, second Michigan value that maybe gets 10 to 15 fantasy points. The winning group would be the Flemings Merkovich or Flemings Wagler look, I think. So yeah, some tough decisions. This is a pretty good slate for multiple lineups, but I'm all over David Merkovich here. Tomislav Ivicevic, he's just too low on the totem pole, so probably not too much interest there. Kylan Boswell is hard to use in anything outside of alt builds. He has priced very low at 6-1. And then Wagler at 8-5. Wagler versus Flemings, I think that's a decision, but I would lean Fleming still in that spot. All right, moving on, we have Vanderbilt taking on Nebraska. I thought Troy could give Nebraska a game, and I was absolutely wrong about that. See, I'll pat myself on the back for the wins, but also the losses will take its stride. This is a very interesting matchup. This is one I would stay far away from in Survivors. I don't know that I can really feel good about betting it either. It's a 1.5 point spread in favor of Vanderbilt, total of 146.5. I do think Vanderbilt gets the win here in my original bracket. I did have Vanderbilt moving on to the Sweet 16 and taking on Florida again for the rubber match. I think that they ultimately do beat Nebraska here. Now, price-wise, you can see Rink Mast at 6.3 after a 30-plus game. He's still underpriced. Tyler Tanner at 9K. Throwing another stud into the mix who's, quite frankly, a little underpriced. Duke Miles coming off of a bad game where he's going to have like 10% ownership. He's a very intriguing look, right? Price Sanford's there at 8.8. Nobody rosters him. He doesn't project well, but would be shocked if he put up a 50 here. Maybe a little because of that Vanderbilt defense, but he's definitely capable. Then you've got the value piece in Jamarcus Lawrence there at 4.9. Lawrence is one of those values who he's kind of like Dallin Hall for a while, just always projects well, but doesn't necessarily put up big scores. However, against Troy, he took care of serious business. 13, 3, and 4 with 2 steals, hit 2 threes, put up 27. But the big thing was he took 15 shots in that game, 10 of which were threes. Now, he only made 2, but that was crazy shot volume for a guy at 4.8. Now, Jaden Jackson for Cal Baptist, similar range, similar type of player. I'm sorry, he took 7 threes. Similar range, similar type of player, but I feel infinitely better about him. Minutes might hit a snag. We might see him play about 30, 32. If it's close throughout, as it should be, we could see him touch into the 36, 37 range. And at this price, 4.9, nearly 5K, I think Lawrence is a very strong main team look value that people just aren't going to get to. You also have my man Braden Frager, who's priced there at 4.8. Frager, when he gets the minutes, he played 26. He's a very strong fantasy point per minute player. Frager will be another guy who's probably 8, 9K next year. I feel pretty confident saying that. But in a competitive game here against Vanderbilt, I think it might be a little too fast for him. And I'm worried that he plays like 18 to 19 minutes instead of 25, 26. And if that's the case, we're going to see a kind of a reduced game. At 23 minutes, he's right around 4.2, 4.3. But if he plays 18, 19 minutes in a competitive game, he's just not going to be playable. So be careful with that. GPP look is fine, but Lawrence as a main team look. Mast, I think, is usable there as well. And then Tanner and or Miles. But obviously can't get them all in with your Houston stack and Duke stack. But we do have those secondary slates tonight and late. So maybe we can get a little Vanderbilt Nebraska stack on that slate. All right, that takes us to the final game here, High Point versus Arkansas. And again, we're at a game where I want to play the pay up. This is a great slate, all sides. And this as a nice, as the quote unquote late game hammer, if you will, um, is absolutely the best game on the slate. So we've identified already enough plays to fill out our lineup, and then we get to this one where it's like it could absolutely just be a straight up game stack. Um, we know Darius Acuff at 9.8 is a great play overall if you can get there. Trevin Brazil, who's priced at 8.1, they dropped his price down a little bit. What are you trying to do here to me, DK? You trying to make me roster Brazil again? 8.1 is just way too cheap for him. Why did his price go down after 4 straight games? Actually, 6 straight games of 38 plus fantasy points. That makes 0 sense. Got to consider Trevon Brazil. Even if he were to get into foul trouble, he's got to play. Nick Pringle is highly questionable once again. We're going to see Malik Ewan probably play 30 plus minutes. We're going to see Malik Thomas play 35 plus minutes. Brazil and Acuff are going to play 36 plus minutes. And then Wagner, Richmond, and maybe 1 or 2 minutes for Sealy will kind of divvy up the rest. Late game slate or the late night slate, I will absolutely be stacking this game fully. Brazil, I love low ownership, high upside. Give me all of that. The high point side, though, we've got to give some consideration to as well. Before we get into the high point pecking order here and what to look for, let's go into the Hawaii game. 97-78 win for Arkansas there. Hawaii had some looks. They made some shots, but they just athletically, this is what I said I was worried about. They weren't able to compete. Hunter Erickson, Isaac Finlinson, Harry Ruliadev, those guys had great seasons, but none of them have the kind of athleticism that requires them to run up and down the court with the Hogs. Isaac Johnson, same thing, got into foul trouble, never really got going. What we did see is Dre Bullock, who does have a level of athleticism and could probably honestly play in the SEC, kind of just hard carried Hawaii as much as he could. 21 points, 8 rebounds, 4 stocks. Pretty solid game overall for him. So I wanted to bring that up because High Point has several guys who kind of fit the archetype / mold of a Dre Bullock and could find some success here. Rob Martin comes to mind, 23 points, 10 assists in that win over Wisconsin. I think he is the most likely to have a big game on the perimeter here for High Point. Terry Anderson and Owen Aquino, both really strong options as well, but I think more luxury plays here. And then Cameron Fletcher. Got to mention Cameron Fletcher. I was really quite upset because he was super cheap on FanDuel, number one, but on DK, priced at 6.6. It's so hard to get there. I wasn't sure because his minutes were ramped up in the title game, Big South title game over Winthrop. Played 29 minutes, put up 44. I knew he was probably playing like at least mid-20s minutes, but off the bench, he played 33, 14-11, second straight game with a double-double, 34 fantasy points in that one. His price drops 100 to 6.5, going up against this Arkansas team, an athletic guy who has power conference experience. Why should we not want to roster him in a high amount of lineups? Absolutely love Fletcher here. I got to say, if he's playing, at 30 minutes, he's a slate breaker. We're almost at 6x. If he's playing, close game, let's say he goes 34, we're talking about, that's a scary number. Let's say he goes to overtime, plays 38 minutes. I mean, we're getting into a range here where his rates, his fantasy point per minute numbers are Alan Graves-like level here. Extremely small sample because he's been hurt for a lot of games, but he is absolutely phenomenal and will have a chance to put up a huge game here against Arkansas. I truly believe that. So Rob Martin, 7.6, Cam Fletcher at 6.5, both the strong plays on High Point. Terry Anderson is a little bit too pricey for us at 8.8. We're just not going to get there. And Owen Aquino at 7.2, same thing. Big decision. If Pringle's out and Malik Ewan scores, I think you just plug in Ewan. We've gotten the benefit of being on most of Ewan's big games. Without Pringle, he's got to play 30-plus minutes. You saw him put up 46 against Hawaii. Against this High Point team, I would suspect he puts up another 30-plus. You can see here on the projection line, right around at 28 minutes, 29, 30 fantasy points, 5.3x. If he plays how many minutes did he play again? let's see here. 31. So, I mean, at 31 minutes, you can't fade them. You're just not able to fade these guys at these prices. But we also only have 8 slots. So, absolutely in play as a game stack. Late night slate, you're stacking that one up with some Vanderbilt guards, and you're cashing away. So, pretty much every single game on this slate, this is what the nice part is, I can make a justification for 2 or 3 guys per game. So, reduced slate at 8 games from 16, but I still think we're going to see a pretty good amount of spread out ownership. Now, I haven't been given a core on the show lately just because I've been saving that for the community. I will give 2 guys that I absolutely will not be fading in any lineup that I make tomorrow. 2 and 2 only. There'll be some variety in the rest. Number 1, Malik Ewan. Assuming Pringle's out. Well, it's the last game of the slate, but I 5-5. I'm just not fading Ewan. So that's number 1. It'll be chalky as well. So not a brain busting play there by any means. Stop sharing this. And then the second play, this one may or may not surprise anyone, but because there's a lot of different looks and I have to sacrifice someone, but I'm not fading Terrence Hill at 6'8". Just a perfect archetype for the tournament. A scoring guard, can facilitate, can rebound. I mean, 23 shots is 23 shots, guys. You look at his logs the last 5 games, 23, 15, 10, 14, and 11. Just absolutely chucking. It's actually kind of weird he doesn't start, but he's going to get back. He's going to get in the game like after 2 minutes, and he's just not going to come out and paste up, the way that the way that this Illinois game should play out. Both offenses should be able to put up a pretty high number. So Malik Ewan and Terrence Hill, certainly my top 2 plays, I think, on this slate on a point per dollar basis. Sacrifices to be made. Might have to not play Cameron Boozer just to be able to fit 2 of Kingston Fleming's, David Merkovich, Adeymara. And then that's not even to mention, Cameron Fletcher out there as well. So really good looking slate. Looking forward to this one a tremendous amount. All right. So that takes us to the end there. Let's pull up some underdog stuff and best bet. So best bet number 1, we hit that total today in the Miami game. So shout out to Miami and Missouri for that. It looked pretty bad. It was like 29, 27 at halftime. The over 145.5 looked well and truly dead. I think the live total at halftime was 131, and we got the over at 146. So let's go. All right. Best bet number 1, VCU versus Illinois, over 151.5. There's been some good totals in the tournament so far, and we've had some real good success with totals. So no need to reinvent the wheel here. We will hit play number 1, best bet number 1, over 151.5 between 11 seed VCU and 3 seed Illinois. High Point versus Arkansas. I do like High Point plus 11.5. I had to eat my words a little bit. They were struggling to cover the last couple of games in their conference play, and I just thought that Wisconsin coming in with their guard play was going to overwhelm them. And High Point, well executed game plan. So I see Arkansas winning this 7-8 points a lot of the time. So give me that 11.5. I have it as a more of a fair line as -10. So we have a little bit of value there. Houston -10.5. I think that Texas A&M, this will be one we can probably look at halftime. See Houston maybe being up, 2-3 points, but I think they turn it on in the second half. So I do like them to cover there. Michigan State -4.5 against Louisville. I mentioned it when that game was first known. 4 to 5 points was a slam for me. 4.5 splits the difference. I'm all in there. And then last one, TCU plus 11.5. So pretty solid. Not spraying the board by any means, but 5 or 6 of the 8 games here we have a play on. So recap: Michigan State -4.5, TCU plus 11.5, Houston -10.5, VCU, Illinois over 151.5, and then high points plus 11.5. All right, props time. Let's talk some props. All right, let's pull this up on old Underdog. Excuse me. Mara's point prop at 14.5. I don't want to do that. I love that in Mara. His PRA is 25.5. I don't want to play that point prop. There's too much that could go wrong. You can still have a big game while scoring only 9 or 10 points. So I'm going to stay away from that one. Trey McKinney over 1.5 threes. I mentioned that earlier in the show. I'm going right back to that again because of the plus money involved there. Trey Green over 2.5 threes, like that one as well. Quentin Jones over 12.5 PRA. That's just free. That is just free. We've seen Jones have some struggles here, but he's going to have a good game. Over 12.5 PRA. And I don't play PRA much these days, but 12.5 for Q Jones playing 28 plus minutes. Sign me all the way up. Let's see here. Oh, gosh. I have a million kids running around here yet tomorrow. So Terrence Hill's points prop is 16.5. Was 15.5 yesterday. Let's see. Is that too much? Does that push me off? No, it doesn't. I'm all in. Terrence Hill over 16.5. Lock and load. The other ones, Quentin Jones over 12.5 PRA, Trey McKinney over 1.5 threes. Like those are definitely solid plays and strong plays, and I'll have them in a ticket. But being that I have Terrence Hill projected at nearly 20 points, the over 16.5 is a huge edge for us. Actually surprised they didn't beef it up a little bit more. So over 16.5, yes, please. Merkovich point prop went up a point as well. It's 15.5 yesterday. It's at 16.5 here. I like both. I probably honestly might end up just rolling both of them in my main lineup too. But yes, over 16.5 points for Merkovich and Terrence Hill in the same game. Nice little 2-pick, 3-pick SGP there. Let's see. Let's go to Arkansas. All right. So we hit Brazil over 21.5 points plus rebounds yesterday. They've moved it to 22.5. Still like the over there. Let's see. Rob Martin over 4.5 assists. Definitely like that one too. All right, we just check one more game. We're almost done here. There it is. Let's see what Vogel still at 10.5 points. So basically just re-hitting the same ones from yesterday, which were Terrence Hill, David Merkovich, and Davis Vogel. All three were good to us. Vogel over 10.5 points. They're just going to be using him a lot. Without Huff, Vogel, he's only a freshman. He's really going to be a star next year. I feel really comfortable and confident saying that. He had 6 points at halftime against Kennesaw, and then ended up finishing with 17 just because he was catching lobs, hitting threes, getting the foul line, really showing out in that second half. And it was a close game against Kennesaw State, and they're playing him in a close game in crunch time. So over 10.5 points for Vogel is a no-brainer. Worley's PRA is at 13.5. That's a pretty strong play too. But the 3-pick ticket that I will deliver, Davis Vogel over 10.5 points, David Merkovich over 16.5 points, and Terrence Hill over 16.5 points. That one's getting to the window. That one is going to make us some good money. My boy Natural Winner in the chat here. Tomorrow's going to be fire. Hell yeah, it is. After that sweaty over earlier today, we're ready. Let's get it. Appreciate you guys' continued support. Another 150 plus of you watching. I know it's a little bit late, but wanted to finish watching that UConn game. We'll get ready here. Have a Sweet 16 breakdown coming once we've got it all figured out on Sunday night. But Monday there will be going up on FTN my breakdown of the Sweet 16 and what to expect and what to look for. But we still have lots of opportunities here Saturday and Sunday. 16 games, 8-8. Let's get it. I really appreciate you guys' continued support. Tomorrow will be a very late show or very early. If you can't catch it, it will be on demand either way because of my kid's party. So just kind of throwing that out there. But let's get after it. On your way out the door, please make sure you guys like, retweet, comment, interaction, social currency, just the era that we live in. I don't like begging for likes any more than anyone else, but it does really help, and I appreciate you guys who have continued to do that. So we'll get out of here, and remember, green screens and window trips. Super Show is out. See you guys tomorrow.